amazing food, and make new friends from near and far. Your radio is the only passport you'll need. Join us for Travel with Rick Steves, Saturday afternoons at 1 on KSJE.
Joining me this morning from the Bureau of Land Management office here in Farmington, the Deputy Director of Policy and Programs for the Bureau of Land Management, William Pendley, is joining us via Skype this morning. Mr. Pendley, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Scott, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much. Beautiful day in Farmington.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for being here. You are in Farmington today to visit with the BLM and certainly get familiar with what's going on in this part of the Bureau of Land Management holdings, of course. And so I guess let's start by just talking about your visit thus far. What have you been doing while you've been in town?
Scott drove down from the Bureau, Robert F. Burford headquarters up in Grand Junction. We established our headquarters in the West a few days ago, and so that's where I headquarter. And so I was able to jump in a government vehicle and run on down here for meetings, and it's been quite awesome. We went to Chaco Canyon yesterday, had a marvelous tour with the National Park Service there, really eye-opening and very inspirational, the wonderful work the Park Service is doing there. I know Secretary Bernhardt was there several months ago, and of course he went there as a youth coming out of Silt, Colorado. So that was a wonderful experience. And then this morning here in Farmington, we went over and visited fantastic recreation area in the Glade, where we're hoping to have a big slick rock event next year. Hope we can hold it next year. We're not able to this year. And then went up and saw some oil and gas, coal, and solar project activity northwest of the city.
Very good. And that really kind of encapsulates the Bureau of Land Management's efforts here in the area, because you are charged with managing all these federal lands, whether it's for natural resource development or off-road hiking and recreation or maybe historic preservation. And so you brought up Chaco Canyon, Mr. Pendley. I'd like to ask you a bit about that. I know certainly there's a lot of feelings one way or the other about
right.
preserving the area around the park. The park is certainly preserved as a national monument, but the area around it. I know the BLM's now asking for comments about a resource plan, and there's been some requests to maybe extend the deadlines on that. Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
You bet, Scott. This plan has a long history. It did not begin with the Trump administration. It began back in 2014 when scope meetings were initially held. And we had some scoping meetings initially for about 30 days or so, 60 days, I guess, and then we expanded that for 30 days. We didn't think we had all the information we wanted. 2016, we had more scoping meetings, initially for about 60 days, and then we expanded that another 120 days. And earlier we got about 1,800 comments. This time we got 18,000 comments. And so those scoping meetings, Scott, were the predecessor to our resource management plan that we developed in draft and released on February the 28th with a 120-day comment period. And one of the things that we did, I think above and beyond the call of duty, but certainly consistent with the needs of local folks, was we hand-delivered that 3-volume RMP to 23 chapter houses. We personally, BLM people personally drove to the chapter houses and handed over that 3-volume document to say, here's what we're going to be talking about. The virus hit. We had to go to virtual meetings. We had 5 virtual meetings via Zoom, but we also did it on radio. We were having a radio broadcast at the time and said, hey, if you have a question, you don't have internet access, you can't participate in the Zoom conference, please call us in with any comments you have. And we thought that was very successful. We think we had, 70 to 120 people on those 5 Zoom meetings. And then the secretary, in response to the request of Navajo Nation and the other Pueblos, said, okay, we're going to give you more time. We know that the virus has hit the Navajo Nation very, very hard. And so we're going to give you another 120 days. And so we took that time to have 5 radio meetings. And President Jonathan Nez suggested to us, hey, why don't you get on radio and do your meetings on radio? And we said, well, that's a great idea. So we had those radio meetings. First one, Navajo Nation focus. The second one was the other Pueblos. And then the third and fourth, more of the public. Now, we know the president of the Navajo Nation participated significantly in number 4, which was great to have him in on that fourth one. And I'll tell you, Scott, one of the things we did in those radio shows that we did not do before in the Zoom meetings was we had our subject matter experts, our what we call SMEs, the people, the worker bees that really know their stuff. We had them participating in that radio show. And so whenever somebody said, I've heard X, we said, well, geez, that's not accurate. Let's get the expert on the radio. So we'd get our expert on the radio, and he or she would say, well, here's the facts. Here's what's going on. And I think we put a lot of minds at ease with that. That being said, you can just see, Scott, with the long time this has been underway, in almost 6 years, approaching 7 years this has been underway. I've never seen an RMP with this kind of public involvement and extensive comment period that we've had on this. I think we've gone above and beyond the call of duty here on working with the public and having public comments and getting their responses. But let me just assure your listeners, the clock has not run out. It runs out on Friday, the 25th. You still have time with email, voicemail, snail mail, if it's postmarked Friday, to let us know what you're thinking about this plan. We're going to take all those comments under advisement and make the best decision we can make for the people of Farmington, the people of Indian country, for the American people, consistent with the president's desires to grow the economy, increase recreation, and protect our valuable natural resources, and work cooperatively with the tribal community.
I see. Okay. Well, Mr. Pendley, I appreciate that answer, and thank you. And so it sounds like that the deadline is the deadline for comment this Friday. I know some folks are concerned. You mentioned some of the extraordinary things that the BLM did during this whole 2020 COVID-19 pandemic situation, having these meetings on the radio and offering answers and things like that. I know folks are still concerned, though, about if everybody who wanted to take part in the process was able to take part in the process because of these extenuating circumstances of COVID-19. And you feel pretty confident they were?
Scott, anybody who wanted to participate, who wanted to comment, who wanted to have his say on what was going on, had that opportunity.
Understood.
I just, if you didn't file comments during this extensive time, then either you weren't paying attention, or you don't care about it. So I think the people have cared, and I know people are passionate about it. I get it. I understand. We want to hear from those people. Please, if you're passionate about this issue, this is important to you. If you're, say, you're an Alati and you've got property out there, and you say, geez, me and my fellow Alatis, we'd like to have this developed. Well, we want to hear from you. If you're concerned about some issues surrounding Chaco Canyon, the 5-mile issue, the 10-mile issue, weigh in on that, for goodness sakes. We want to hear about that. If you're concerned about jobs, it's all on the table. And this is a unique situation, Scott. I can't stress how unique it is. Bureau of Indian Affairs does not have a resource management plan. And so Bureau of Indian Affairs and Assistant Secretary Tara Sweeney joined with us at the Bureau of Land Management to prepare this plan. And we could not have been more cooperative with our stakeholders, our government-to-government relationship with the tribal nations, and with our neighbors than we have been. I'm just so proud of what New Mexico BLM has done and what Farmington has done. It's a great study for any other BLM office to take a look at and see how do you handle a contentious issue and ensure public participation, especially during the pandemic.
Understood.
They wrote the book, Scott.
Very good. Well, and that is one of the things when we talk about this Chaco Canyon area, Director Pendley, as I'm sure you understand as well, there are so many different jurisdictions down there that all bound on have a boundary with the park and with the area. You have to deal with. You can't really act in a vacuum. The BLM has to work with the BIA and even maybe the state of New Mexico when we talk about the area around Chaco Canyon. Isn't that true?
Right. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Everybody, there are just so many people who are passionate about it. It was one of Theodore Roosevelt's first national monument. I'm proud to say, coming from Wyoming, the first national monument was Devil's Tower. But Chaco Canyon was close on its heels in 1907, and the designation it was a perfect designation consistent with the Antiquities Act. That's why Congress wrote the Antiquities Act, prevent the kind of desecration we were seeing in that magnificent place prior to the designation. And then Congress in 1980 creates it as a national park for research and study and obviously preservation. And we met with the park superintendent there. We had a wonderful, I think I was there 3 or 4 hours. And she was telling me what she thought. She said, well, I filed official comments, but let me tell you what is of concern to me and the park. Mm-hmm. Speaking for the park. We've heard from everybody, and we're going to give every comment a careful look.
Very good. And maybe you can help us understand, too, the delicate balancing act that the BLM has when you are dealing with an issue like Chaco Canyon, when you're talking about these great open spaces too, and you have a buffer zone around the park, and maybe it's smaller or larger depending on where things go. But on certain days, you could have a rig or something in the very far distance that could still impact the sight lines from parts of the park. I think that's part of what people are maybe concerned about is as that development may creep closer, or in some areas that may disrupt some of the sight lines. Certainly noise is an issue. The night skies, of course, that Chaco Canyon is known for worldwide. All these things are in play, are they not?
Yeah, you're right, Scott. Every one of those issues, you know your subject, obviously. Every one of those issues you just raised was raised by the Superintendent of the Park Service of Chaco Canyon. She raised each one of those issues to me. But I will say to you, as we drove out there, there's oil and gas development, and I don't mean on the drive to the park, but all over this area, northwestern New Mexico. This has been a hot spot since 1910, and so all over we've got oil and gas activity. And so we're driving down some of the road, and the BLM people here were pointing out to me, okay. Here we hid this rig over here, or we hid this activity over here, or maybe the operator wanted to put it in this place, but we said, well, could you put it over in this other place so it'd be less visible? And so, in addition, we do things like paint facilities. We have experts. This sounds crazy, doesn't it? We have experts in the Bureau of Land Management who are experts on the kind of color of paint that we can use to help hide facilities. And I will tell you, there's places in BLM land of a modern era. Obviously, the old-timers did it differently. But stuff of a modern era where you look out onto a landscape, and heck, if you can see the oil well. And I've had BLM people take me out in the field and challenge me and say, Perry, can you find the derrick? And so we're sensitive to that, and it's not just about sacred areas like Chaco Canyon. Yeah, that's an important issue. But our recreators, they don't want to be riding by something they might consider unsightly, especially if we can put it somewhere else. But we are a multiple use agency. We're being asked. Every other agency in government can focus laser-like on its job. Our job is multiple use. Congress says to us, do it all. Do it all. You got 245 million acres for which you're responsible, 11 western states and Alaska, and do mining, do oil and gas, do all of the above energy, do recreation, do grazing, preserve monuments, preserve wild and scenic rivers, take care of archaeology and paleontological, and I'm sure take care of wild horses.
Right.
And so in all of those activities, we have to do all of them, and that's the balance. And that's why we go, like I say, Scott, that's why we go through the planning process like we're doing on the Farmington RMP. We want to know what the public thinks. Do you have a better idea? Are we forgetting something? Can you help us make a better decision?
I got it. Understood. Well, let me change gears just a little bit, Mr. Pendley, and ask you a little bit about outdoor recreation, because as you know, the city of Farmington and San Juan County is really embracing that concept as a way to diversify the economy here and to maybe attract some new businesses, certainly some new visitors and things like that. And they've certainly been touting their partnership with the BLM. You mentioned the Glade area that you toured earlier on your visit here this week. And so it's a great resource for a lot of mixed use and a lot of places where people can go out and recreate. But how do you see that relationship moving forward between the BLM and the city and the county to maybe unlock some of these great recreational areas that are really natural wonders here in the area?
Well, one of the positive things that come out of the virus, if there's anything positive to come out of the virus, and that is the Bureau of Land Management's recreational lands have been discovered. I went on Tucker Carlson's Fox television show back on the 24th of April because Tucker said, hey, all the parks are closed. Can't go anywhere. Can't recreate. So I called his producer and I said, hey, the Bureau of Land Management opened. We got 245 million acres. So I went on his show and talked for about 5 minutes with great photographs that BLM had provided of the great places that people could go. And we've been overwhelmed. The national parks closed, state parks closed, your local theaters closed, but the Bureau of Land Management land was open, all during the pandemic. And at great personal sacrifice, I'll have to say, on the part of state directors, field managers, district managers, to make sure we're going to keep our facilities open. We're going to protect our employees, we're going to protect the public, but we're going to keep our facilities open. And we were overwhelmed with visitors. People said, well, James, there's nowhere else to go. Maybe we go on BLM lands. And it was really magnificent. Now, when the pandemic is over, when people start planning their recreation for next summer, I don't think they're going to go back to the parks. I don't think they're going to say, well, we go to Italy. I think they're going to come to your local BLM lands. And so we're working aggressively to be able to do that and respond to that. And the president signed the Great American Outdoors Act, and 5 presidents and 9 secretaries of the Interior tried to get it done. President Trump got it done, and that's going to provide a real shot in the arm financially to the Bureau to be able to improve its facilities. So the secretary's personally involved in selecting things, but we're listening to our field office. We're listening to Farmington say, okay, we're working with Farmington, we're working with San Juan County, we're working with our recreational partners who are helping us run these facilities, and here's what we think we ought to do for the next generation of visitors who are coming. And when I say visitors coming, I mean residents of Farmington and San Juan County, but I also mean people coming in from New York and California who want to come here and get over on some of our slick rock and test their mettle.
There you go. You mentioned maybe using some of the BLM facilities to host some of these great events. We've seen some off-road events and four-wheeler events and things like that held out in the Glade before, and certainly in times of no pandemic that has been happening and hopefully will happen again. And so there does seem to be some opportunities for tourism and visitation from outside of the area to some of these attractions that we have here in our own backyard that are managed by the BLM.
Absolutely right. We're going to tweet out this afternoon. The We Rock Nationals are coming back to Farmington next September. Of course, with the pandemic this September and the governor's mandate, we were not able to do it. Well, we're really committed to doing it next year, and we're just hoping our folks come back. And it's a great event. Suddenly, as you know, Farmington shuts down to facilitate a great event. I was over there. I got to tell you, Scott, people are nuts. The stuff they're doing over there, but it's great entertainment, and we're delighted to be able to provide it. We got a wonderful little campground over there that's fun, and it's just a magnificent area, and we want to grow our visitors and grow their enjoyment of our facilities.
Good point. That's true. And you mentioned the getting input from the field offices, and of course the Farmington field office is one of your largest, at least in the state of New Mexico. It's at least my understanding. And so they manage an awful lot of property and an awful lot of federal lands in this corner of the state. Is that, I guess, is it working? Is it big and not too big, not too small? I mean, it's a big organization to have in the Farmington field office, right?
Yeah, they're great. Everything I've seen, and that's the great thing, Scott, about going out and visiting the local offices. When I was in Washington before we moved our headquarters out to Grand Junction, every day I'd make a decision based on a photograph, a map, and a piece of paper. And I guess we can do that, and we've done it for decades. But the far better thing is to come out, get in a government rig, and drive down a long dusty road, and get out of the pickup and stand out and look at the site. Say, okay, we're going to do this here and that there, and every employee that I've met has been just so diligent and so committed and so knowledgeable, and that's a great thing. Typically in Washington, most of the people don't know what they're talking about. I'm sorry, but you get out here to the field office. These are the working shifts. These are the people that really know their subject. And so it's been really rewarding to get out and to understand and have appreciation that when I get a decision coming up, say out of the Farmington field office, then I'm going to know that I talked to the people that prepared that document, and I'm going to be able to rely on it. I'm going to be able to recommend to the assistant secretary, and the secretary, and the deputy secretary, yeah, this is a righteous decision. This is what we ought to be doing.
Very good. Just a couple of minutes remaining with our time together this morning, Director Pendley. I wanted to ask you, but you mentioned wild horses earlier, and I know that's been a program the BLM's been in charge of and working with for a number of years. And so, can you give us an update on how things are? Do we still have an issue with wild horses here in the West that need to be managed and curtailed in some degree, I guess?
Well, Scott, we really do. Congress mandated back in the 70s that we protect these historic icons in the American West. And everybody loves and values the Mustang, the wild horse, the burro. They really are just so emblematic of the American West and our great, great history in this wonderful country. But I'm sorry, we've loved them to death. We have 95,000 of them, and we ought to have about 27,000 of them. It's bad for the range. My experts, the BLM experts, tell me there's parts of our range that will never recover. Never recover. They will never be more than essentially a piece of concrete. They've been that damaged. And so it's bad. It's bad for the indigenous wildlife. It's bad for the endangered species and threatened species. It's bad for the ecosystem. It's really bad for our neighbors. And it's a terrible thing to do to these horses. It's not compassionate. And they're dying, they're starving. There's not enough rangeland to sustain them. And so we got to get those numbers down. We're working cooperatively with Congress. I I met with the advisory committee on wild horse and burros last year. I was the first director of the BLM to meet with them in 10 years. And I sat down with them and I told them what I told the Society of Environmental Journalists, which is I think it's an existential threat to our public lands. And we got to do something about it. And so I'm hoping that the animal welfare groups that I've communicated with in the past, I'm going up to one of their conferences in Cody next month, Cody, Wyoming. Mm-hmm. And so I hope they'll say, hey, Perry, you're right. It's a big deal. We want to work together and solve this problem. We want to protect the horses, but we all want to protect the public lands. So that's a message I'm communicating to Congress. I know the Secretary is totally on board on this. We sent a report up to Congress on it. We got a long way to go. We didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to solve the problem overnight. So, but we're committed to doing something because it's just not fair to the horses. It's not fair to our neighbors, and it's not fair to the American people for whom we're protecting this public lands because we're not able to do that job.
Well, Deputy Director Perry Pendley, thank you for joining me this morning. One quick correction. Director Pendley said that there were several meetings about Chaco Canyon held on the radio. There was one meeting held on the radio. The others were online. I'm Scott Michlin. Thank you for joining me this morning, everybody. Have a great Friday. The time right now is 8:58.
Considered by many to be the seminal modern thinker,